Chapter 1142. He didn't notice at all that the atmosphere in the courtyard had become incomparably strange. Everyone's eyes were staring at him. Kacha! Just as Muyu was about to speak, he suddenly heard a cracking sound. The teacup in Xiao Qin's hand had been crushed. Broken! Broken! A natural hostility arose in Muyu's heart. Muyu looked at the teacup in Xiao Qin's hand in horror. The hair on his body stood on end, and he ran away without thinking. Catch him for this, king. Beat him to death. Xiao Qin's cold voice rang out. Hellion Theo silently raised his hand to his forehead, pretending that he hadn't seen anything. Ah! He killed someone? Help! Muyu ran for his life in front, while Xing'er chased after him wholeheartedly. They ran all over the house in the courtyard. Jingyu sat in her original position and didn't move at all. Xing'er, remember to sew his mouth shut when you catch him, Jingyu said with a smile. Ah! You're abusing a child. Muyu heard Jingyu's words and screamed again. Child my ass! Is there a child as old as you? Moreover, you haven't even done anything yet. Only then did Xiao Chun, Hellion Xiao, and the others slowly sit down. They raised their hands to brew a pot of tea, completely ignoring the tragic screams around them, and sat together in a circle. Jingyu, are you all right? Hellion Theo frowned slightly and looked at Jingyu's lifeless eyes. Yes, I'm fine. Jingyu nodded and said, Thank you for this matter. You're welcome. Hellion Theo smiled faintly and lowered his eyes. If it didn't concern your life, I wouldn't have done this. Hellion Theo didn't say what he was thinking. Xiao Chun also didn't say why Hellion Theo helped him. However, how could Xiao Chun not understand what Hellion Theo meant? Jingyu didn't understand, but Xiao Chun couldn't ignore it. Xiao Chun definitely wouldn't have asked Hellion Theo for help if he had any other choice. Hellion Xiao, I owe you a favor for what you did this time. Xiao Chun narrowed his eyes, and a sharp look appeared in his cold eyes. He looked at Hellion Theo and said, I will pay you back in the future. Hellion Theo looked at Xiao Chen's eyes. Although his words were filled with gratitude, the warning in his eyes was too obvious. Hellion Theo couldn't ignore it even if he wanted to. I'll be waiting. Hellion Theo replied faintly and didn't say anything else. Speaking of which, Jingyu frowned slightly and said in confusion, Hellion Theo, aren't you the emperor? How can you come out so casually? Huh? Hellion Theo covered his mouth and smiled. It's better to do it personally when it comes to matters related to different pupils. But I don't have different pupils anymore. Jingyu frowned. When she said this, she once again thought of Qin Bai's words on the battlefield. She originally thought that she was rushing in the direction of saving her life. She was duty-bound and trusted him so much. However, she didn't expect that the path she took to be a bottomless abyss. Jingyu lowered her eyes, and her eyes were filled with a cold light. Xiao Chun seemed to sense the change in Jingyu's mood. He raised his hand and held Jingyu's hand tightly, transmitting the warmth from his palm to Jingyu's hand. Chapter 1143. Jingyu sighed slowly, suppressed her emotions, and said, I'm fine. Jingyu, this is a deal between me and Xiao Chun. Hellion Theo's heart trembled when he saw the interaction between the two. He said, You don't have to worry about it. Huh? A deal? Jingyu blinked and tilted her head in Xiao Chen's direction. It's okay. Xiao Chen raised his hand and stroked Jingyu's hair. He said, This is between us men. Ah. Jingyu's face darkened slightly. Why did she feel that this line was inexplicably familiar? Jingyu, Xiao Chun, and Hellion Theo sat in the courtyard for a long time. They talked for a long time, but most of the time, they were silent. However, every time they fell silent, Muyu would suddenly appear and run past them. They listened to his cries for help. Jingyu couldn't help but feel that Muyu's lung capacity was extraordinary. He ran and shouted at the same time. It had been so long, but he still had so much energy. Ah! I was wrong. I apologize. Finally, not long after Jingyu had this thought, Muyu was like a dead dog. He lay motionless on the stone chair. Jingyu could hear Muyu's panting. I apologize. Muyu stood up and said, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called you blind. I shouldn't have said that in front of so many people. Didn't I apologize? Apologize to your grandpa. How can you apologize like this? Hellion Theo couldn't listen to him anymore. He raised his hand and grabbed Muyu's collar, almost strangling Muyu's neck. He dragged Muyu away to prevent this idiot from talking. Sorry to disturb you. The smile at the corner of Hellion Shio's mouth stiffened. He raised his hand and grabbed Jingyu's collar and dragged her out of the courtyard. Cough, cough, cough. I'm gonna die. Let go. Cough, cough, cough. Muyu's face turned red from being strangled. His eyes rolled back violently, but fortunately his mouth was gagged. Xing'er watched as Muyu was dragged away. The corner of his eyes twitched violently. There was actually such a weirdo in this world. Jingyu pursed her lips silently. However, Muyu had made such a fuss. Jingyu suddenly felt it seemed that if he was blind, so be it. It was just that. Jingyu had always been a thorn in her heart. She couldn't see anything now that her pupils were gone. Although nothing had happened since Jingyu opened her eyes, she still felt unreconciled and depressed. She didn't think that after Muyu's antics today, Jingyu would suddenly sigh in relief. It seemed like she didn't take it seriously. Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. A day passed quickly. Jingyu was once again exhausted and busy. Nanli and Tokyo were still not moving, which made her feel a little uneasy. The soldiers hadn't left yet. Xiaoqin didn't dare to rashly leave the city, nor could he initiate an attack. The only thing he could do now was to protect Jinling City. I transmigrated here. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. Jingyu's hard work finally bore fruit. After half a month of attacking, Jingyu finally passed through the sandbags perfectly. Not bad, not bad. You finally didn't collapse. Shangguan Linglin's eyes were filled with joy, but his words were merciless. Chapter 1144. How could you praise someone like that? Jingyu was just feeling happy when she heard Shangguan Linglin's sarcastic remark. Her face immediately darkened. All right, let's move on to the next task. Shangguan Linglin walked towards Jingyu and said, Now, I want you to listen to sounds and identify things. This was very difficult. It was the sound of the cup being placed on the table. Through your touch and sound, you could tell how wide the table was, where the cup was placed, and whether the cup was made of wood, porcelain, or bamboo. She had to rely on the touch of her hand and the feeling of her fingers to identify the position of the object. Then, she would memorize the position of the object and avoid it. If the previous training was just to identify hearing, then this training was to train her memory. Under the circumstances where she couldn't see, it was undoubtedly difficult to memorize things using this method. The most frightening thing was Shangguan Linglin's request was for Jingyu to walk, avoid, and memorize things like a normal person. A person who couldn't see wouldn't know how to avoid these things. Most of the time, they would reach out and touch things randomly. However, what Jingyu had to do was to act like a normal person and naturally avoid these things by touching them without leaving a trace. Without any instructions or hints, she had to avoid these things that were blocking her way. Unsurprisingly, at the beginning, Jingyu's thighs, waist, ankles, and other parts of her body were bruised because she couldn't identify the object. However, it was under this training that Jingyu was able to identify the position of the object more quickly. Everyone saw Jingyu's hard work and clearly understood why Jingyu was doing this. Outside the room, everyone's hearts trembled slightly as they watched Jingyu's actions. They frowned. That girl who refused to admit defeat. Is it that difficult? Muyu craned his neck and looked inside. He saw Jingyu bumping into the table time and time again and grimacing in pain. He silently pursed his lips and raised his hand to cover his eyes with a black cloth. Then, he imitated Jingyu's actions and walked forward, trying to avoid those things. After taking 3 steps, he tripped over the chair in front of him and fell to the ground, clutching his stomach in pain. That's strange. I clearly saw it. Why didn't I avoid it? Muyu clutched his stomach with one hand and lifted the black cloth to look at the chair in front of him with a conflicted expression. Silly. A faint smile appeared on Jingyu's face as she said, If it's really that simple, Why would I need to practice it? Muyu looked at Jingyu, who was standing not far from him, and silently lowered his head. In any case, he had clearly seen the position of the object before coming over to try. However, Jingyu had relied entirely on her own judgment to reach this stage. It was truly amazing. Xiao Chun and the rest took in the scene in front of them and slightly lowered their heads without saying a word. Probably because Xiao Chun had returned, the days passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was snowing heavily and a new year was coming. Jingyu could now clearly distinguish all kinds of sounds. Outside the border, in the Roman forest, Jingyu couldn't see anything. She could only hear the sound of snowflakes falling in the dark night. Chapter 1145. Even if she couldn't see it, Jingyu seemed to be able to imagine it. Xiao Chun, shall we go to the forest to see the snow? Jingyu stood in Jinling City, leaning against Xiao Chun's side. They stood in the corridor of the courtyard, exhaling cold air. She looked up at Xiao Chun slightly and said, Xiao Chun, don't worry. Okay. The corners of Xiao Chun's mouth curled up as he nodded. Winter in the Roman forest is more beautiful than anywhere else. Behind Jinling town, Jingyu was tightly held in Xiao Chun's arms as they sat together on a horse. The large fur coat wrapped Jingyu in Xiao Chun's arms. Only her small head was exposed. Her red cheeks from the wind and frost were very lovable. I know, the Roman forest must be covered in snow now. The trees and the ground must be covered in thick white snow, right? Jingyu's eyes seemed to sparkle with anticipation. Her eyes curved as she said, the reflection in the lake must be the appearance of the snow. Yes. Xiao Chun raised his head slightly and looked at the snow-covered mountain. His eyes softened slightly. In the past, I used to hide in the cave with Yin Jian and Yin Feng every winter. The sparkle in Jingyu's eyes dimmed slightly, as if she was thinking about something. She turned her head away and let the wind blow against her face. When Xiao Chun heard Jingyu's words, his heart trembled slightly. He raised his hand and hugged Jingyu's head tightly. I don't know if Yin Jian and Yin Feng can safely survive this winter. Jingyu's voice was filled with sadness. After that big battle, Jingyu finally became a completely ordinary person. She could no longer feel any connection with Yin Jian and Yin Feng. Everything was like a dream that she had suddenly woken up from. It was illusory, but it made Jingyu feel extremely nostalgic. Her heart faintly flickered with a sense of unwillingness. Jingyu seemed to sigh as she closed her eyes. She buried her head in Xiao Chun's arms and didn't say a word. Xiao Chun hugged Jingyu on a small path in the Roman forest. Xing Er followed quietly behind them. As they walked, they could hear the crisp sound of their feet stepping on the snow. The surroundings were eerily quiet. Jingyu, who was leaning on Xiao Chun's chest, suddenly opened her eyes and straightened up. Someone's coming. Jingyu's expression became serious. He tilted his head and quietly listened to the sounds coming from not far away. The expression on his face gradually turned ugly. There are a lot of people. Let's go. Jingyu could almost instantly tell. She heard the sound of feet stepping on branches, the sound of snow falling to the ground, and the rustling of clothes. Let's go. Xiao Chun didn't ask anything. Even though he didn't hear anything, if Jingyu said there were people, then there must be people. Xiao Chun and Xing Er turned around without hesitation. They whipped their horses and headed into the city. The sounds behind them became quieter. Jingyu hugged Xiao Chun's waist tightly. Her expression was incomparably solemn. The sounds behind them became clearer. Jingyu could even hear the rapid breathing of those people. It was so clear. Xiao Chun and Xing Er finally saw the figures scurrying out from the forest. Their expressions changed slightly. Jia! Xiao Chun and Xing Er galloped quickly. The people behind them didn't relax at all and chased after them relentlessly. Chapter 1146. Xiao Chun, turn me to the back of the horse. Jingyu was silent for a moment, then suddenly looked at Xiao Chun and said. Xiao Chun frowned slightly when he heard this. He looked down at Jingyu and nodded silently. He untied his coat and turned Jingyu to sit behind Xiao Chun. The horse was still running. Meanwhile, Jingyu had a few darts in her hand that were gleaming with cold light. The horse was galloping in the wind and snow, and the men in black were chasing closely behind. Jingyu slowly calmed her beating heart and silently listened to all the sounds in the air. She identified the number of people and the direction. Xing Er looked at Jingyu in surprise. The moment Xing Er looked over, Jingyu suddenly threw the darts in her hand. Under Xing Er's horrified gaze, the 3 darts accurately hit the throats of the 3 men in black. It was a fatal blow. If he didn't know that Jingyu was really blind, Xing Er would have thought that Jingyu's blindness was an illusion. How could a blind person be able to aim to such an extent? Did he just rely on his ears to listen? Xing Er felt his hair stand on end. His heart trembled slightly as he watched Jingyu's darts fly out one after another. Except for one that was blocked, the others all hit the target. Xing Er was really surprised by her ability. With Jingyu's help, Xiao Chun and Xing Er easily avoided the pursuit and rushed into Jinling town. Now was not the time to be hostile, so there was no other way but to hide. They didn't expect the Tokyo and Nan Li's people to be watching them so closely. They had only gone out for a while, and there were already people chasing after them. It seemed like there were spies everywhere in Jinling town. Jingyu dismounted from her horse and stood on the ground. She slowly heaved a sigh of relief and raised her hand slightly. Only then did she feel that her fingertips were trembling. Just now, she really wasn't sure if she could kill them in one blow. However, when she attacked, there wasn't the slightest bit of distracting thoughts in her heart. Now she was a little scared. What would have happened if she didn't hit them? Jingyu slowly clenched her hand. When did she have such unconfident thoughts? Jingyu. Xiao Chun reached out and held Jingyu's hand. Although he didn't say anything, he seemed to convey a deep thought. Jingyu's uneasy heart calmed down slightly, and the corner of her mouth curved into a faint smile. Xing Er, it seems like your injury is almost healed? Jingyu slightly looked at Xing Er and asked. Yes. Xing Er responded and said, it's all thanks to Master bringing back the antidote. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to detoxify the poison in time. That's good. Jingyu walked forward and smiled as she said, Xiao Chun, you haven't told me how you got the antidote from Yintian. I stole it, Xiao Chun replied calmly. Huh? Jingyu was stunned and said in a strange voice, aren't you afraid that you stole poison? Fight poison with poison. That's perfect. Xiao Chun pursed his lips slightly as he replied, Xing Er, it's really hard on you to follow such a master. Jingyu sighed deeply and said earnestly. Xing Er's mouth twitched when he heard this. He silently lowered his head and didn't say anything. Baby's heart is bitter, but baby won't say anything. The heavy snow finally stopped after a few days. When it started snowing, she didn't feel that cold. When the snow melted, Jingyu couldn't help but think to herself. She wanted to hide in the room full of heaters and not come out. Chapter 1147. Why was the winter this year so cold? How did she survive in the past? Inside the house, Jingyu laid on a soft, furry couch with her eyes closed. There was a stove by her feet and another stove by her hand. Jingyu! Jingyu was just about to fall asleep when she was awakened by Shangguan Linglan's angry roar. She knew what Shangguan Linglan wanted to do. Jingyu stood up and wanted to cry, but had no tears. She fell into a state of bitter training again. The New Year's festival was coming. The lively New Year's festival in the past was now just as lively in Jinling town. It was just not as lively as in Tokyo's Imperial City. The New Year's festival was still as lively as ever. The soldiers had hunted countless wild animals in the Roman forest a few days ago. As the New Year's festival approached, the people of Tokyo and Nanli seemed to have a tacit understanding not to do anything. Jingyu wrapped herself in a fur coat and stood on the stairs in the courtyard under the winding corridor. The house was filled with all sorts of laughter. Jingyu listened to the voices, and her eyes were filled with warmth. How good would it be if things could be like this forever? You are. A gentle voice called her. Big brother. Jingyu looked in the direction of the voice and called out with a slight smile. Why are you standing here alone? Jing Lang asked as he raised his hand to help Jingyu tighten her clothes. Big brother, I miss Daddy. Jingyu lowered her head slightly and said as she tugged at her sleeves. When Jing Lang heard Jingyu's words, his face stiffened and a complicated look flashed in his eyes. He sighed deeply and said, Your Daddy has always been by our side. Jingyu remained silent and did not say anything. It was such a short time. The time she spent with her father was so short. If only she had gone to find her father earlier. How great would that have been? Jingyu clenched her fists tightly and lowered her head, not saying a word. Seeing Jingyu like this, Jing Lang's heart trembled slightly. He raised his hand to pull Jingyu into his embrace and sighed deeply. There's still big brother. Jingyu lowered her head and didn't say anything else. The sun was shining brightly outside, and the chilly wind kept blowing. Xiaochen stood by the door and looked at Jingyu and Jing Lang. He lowered his eyes slightly, turned around, and went back into the house without making any movements. After the new year, what came next was war. After all, only defending Jinling and not attacking wasn't a long-term solution. In the meeting tent, Xiaochun, Shengwan Hongwen, Fang Ziqing, and the others were gathered. Jingyu sat quietly on the side, listening to their discussion. They discussed the map and how to attack. Attacking by force is definitely not advisable, but it's not impossible to win by trickery. Fang Ziqing sat in his seat with a solemn expression. Jingyu had never seen Fang Ziqing so serious before. What strategy do you have? Xiaochen looked sideways at Fang Ziqing and asked. The plan I gave you was only 16 words. Fang Ziqing's lips curved into a faint smile as he said, create a diversion. Launch a feint attack. Avoid the strong and attack the weak. When Fang Ziqing finished speaking, Jingyu's eyes widened and her brows furrowed. We all know this, but how do we do it? Shengwan Hongwen also furrowed his brows and looked at Fang Ziqing in disbelief. After all, Fang Ziqing was only a student. In the Imperial City, Fang Ziqing was known as a genius. Chapter 1148. But what they were experiencing now was a battlefield, not something that could be said with words. Shengwan Hongwen still didn't believe Fang Ziqing. It was useless to rely on words at such a young age. But seeing that Xiaochun trusted Fang Ziqing so much, Shengwan Hongwen naturally couldn't say anything. Fang Ziqing seemed to have sensed Shengwan Hongwen's meaning and didn't point it out. He just stood by the side of the map and spoke his thoughts. This was probably the first time Jingyu felt that Fang Ziqing was such a terrifying person. No, or perhaps it was the second time. Jingyu sat in her original position, looking a little absent-minded. She suddenly remembered that in the Imperial City, she had wanted to rob the Grand Tutor's golden Buddhist statue on a whim. At that time, just by looking at it from afar, Fang Ziqing had clearly analyzed the situation at that time and identified the person who was protecting the item. Jingyu narrowed her eyes slightly. At that time, in Jingyu's eyes, Fang Ziqing was just the son of a scholar and had some knowledge. But now that she thought about it, it seemed that Jingyu had underestimated Fang Ziqing from the beginning. Or perhaps she had thought too highly of him. When they first met, Jingyu felt that this person was too hypocritical, but she didn't have any other thoughts. Now that she thought about it, it was probably Fang Ziqing's mask. By their ears, Fang Ziqing was analyzing the situation in an orderly and clear manner. The things that he analyzed with his calm words were the most essential. There was nothing missing, and there was no nonsense at all. He drew everyone's thoughts to him. Jingyu lowered her eyes slightly, listening to Fang Ziqing's analysis. Towards the end, he accurately arranged the troops. It seemed incomparably orderly, but unconsciously, he was advancing step by step. Xiaochen finally decided to take the initiative to attack. Li Weiming and the others also joined the battle. The only thing that surprised Jingyu was the Black Shilants. She originally thought that the Black Shilants would have run away, just like those lions and tigers. But to Jingyu's surprise, none of these inked Shilants ran away. They remained as Li Weiming's mounts and fought alongside them. Jingyu was surprised by this for a long time. So it turned out that these inked Shilants had actually decided on Li Weiming's group. This was a silent counterattack. Jingyu didn't participate. She just sat in the courtyard, calmly waiting for news. Madam, Xing Er stayed behind to protect Jingyu. He raised his hand and placed the teacup in front of Jingyu. He stared blankly at Jingyu's nervous expression for a moment. Madam, master will be fine. Xing Er was silent for a moment before he comforted her. Jingyu was slightly taken aback when she heard Xing Er's words. Then, she placed her hand on her chest in a daze. So she was worried about Xiao Chun. She was worried that Xiao Chun would leave her again. I'm fine. Jingyu slowly lowered her head, picked up the teacup by the side, and calmly took a sip. Xing Er's eyes flashed with surprise when he saw Jingyu's extremely natural actions. His outstretched hand froze. He had wanted to help Jingyu bring the tea, but he didn't expect Jingyu to be able to find the teacup so accurately and pick it up. Madam? Xing Er's voice was full of surprise as he stared at Jingyu. When you put down the teacup and poured the tea, I heard the location of the teacup. It wasn't difficult for me to pick it up accurately. Jingyu smiled calmly and put down the teacup in her hand. The location of the teacup was still accurate. Chapter 1149. Xing Er was completely shocked when he saw Jingyu's actions. Was this really something that a blind person could do? It was probably because she was blind that her hearing became so sensitive. When her vision was good, Jingyu never thought of using her ears to hear anything. But now it was different. She had to use her ears to listen and discern the direction. Jingyu waited in Jinling town for 2 days and nights before the person who went out finally returned. At the same time, he brought back the news of victory. Fang Ziqing's calculations were indeed correct. Tokyo and Nan Li probably didn't expect that Xiao Chun and the others would dare to take the initiative to attack at such a time. They were caught off guard, and Xiao Chun's attacks were all about escaping after one strike. Regardless of whether or not he killed someone, regardless of whether or not he hit the target, he turned around and left without hesitation after one strike. Along the way, there were people who didn't listen to his orders, which led to deaths and injuries. However, the final outcome was so perfect that it made Fang Ziqing's reputation soar. In the next few battles, there were wins and losses. Fortunately, he didn't lose miserably. I want to go too, Jingyu said firmly. Jingyu, Shangwan Linglan frowned slightly. For this battle plan, Jingyu took the initiative to participate for the first time. I agree. Before Shangwan Linglan could refuse, Xiao Chun actually nodded in agreement. Everyone looked at Jingyu in surprise, their eyes wide open. No one is more suitable than Jingyu to act in the dark. Xiao Chun said slowly, I can help you. Jingyu nodded firmly. Everyone looked at each other. When Fang Ziqing heard Jingyu's words, he lowered his head slightly and thought for a moment. Then he nodded firmly and said, the Ninth Emperors are right. The Ninth Imperial Concubine can help us. Fang Ziqing nodded. Avoid the strong enemy and attack the enemy's weak points. Fang Ziqing said slowly, the best way is to sneak up on them. However, Tokyo and Nanli have been on guard against us. We must be careful. In addition, you must not fall for the enemy's tricks. Don't be deceived by superficial appearances. After Fang Ziqing emphasized it again and again, he announced the start of the operation. He brought the route and the people who were assigned to it. This was probably the first time Jingyu had participated in an operation in the past few months. Xiao Chun held her hand tightly as they walked towards their destination. Jingyu couldn't see anything. She could only rely on her ears and all her senses to hear and feel. She could feel that everyone was passing through the forest at this time. She could hear the sound of footsteps on the grass. She could hear everyone's breathing and heartbeat clearly at this moment. The battle had not yet begun. It was still daytime. The real battle would only begin at night. Without Jingyu's strange eyes, no one dared to enter the Roman forest. They could only hide in the dense forest on the outskirts of the forest and pay attention to the changes in their surroundings while waiting for the time to come. Night and day, there was no difference in Jingyu's eyes. Jingyu quietly leaned against Xiao Chun. She didn't know the time and didn't know the night. She could only feel the light shining on her gradually dimming and disappearing. Chapter 1150. The temperature in the surroundings dropped as well. Jingyu understood that the day had passed and the night had arrived. Get ready to move. Xiaochen stood up slowly and spoke slowly. After Xiaochen spoke, everyone stood up and began to prepare. Jingyu also stood up and frowned slightly as she sensed the movements around her. She didn't know why Jingyu didn't feel nervous at all in this situation where she couldn't see anything. Let's go. Xiaochen held Jingyu's hand and led Jingyu forward. Okay. Jingyu quietly followed behind Xiaochen as they headed towards the Tokyo and Nan Li's camp. Everyone behind them was waiting for an opportunity to move. They looked at the Tokyo and Nan Li's defensive line and narrowed their eyes, trying to identify the weak points of the defensive line. Master, the defensive line in the northeast is the weakest, Xing said to Xiaochen after checking the defensive line. Wait. Jingyu remained silent. Just as Xiaochen was about to reply, Jingyu suddenly called out to the two of them. What's wrong? Xiaochen and Xing both looked at Jingyu. No. Jingyu slowly shook her head and said, Xiaochen, bring me closer. Okay. Xiaochen was silent for a moment, then brought Jingyu closer from the other side. Shengwan Linglan and the rest looked at each other and stood in place. Seeing Jingyu and Xiaochen jumping around, the corners of their mouths twitched. What are they doing? Jingyu and Xiaochen stopped at various positions for a while before finally returning under everyone's gaze. Shengwan Linglan and the rest were already impatient from waiting. When Jingyu and Xiaochen returned, they blinked their eyes in confusion. Attack there? Xiaochen silently pointed at a place. Ninth Imperial Uncle, you're not joking, right? Shengwan Linglan looked in the direction Xiaochen was pointing at. The corners of his mouth twitched as he said, although that place isn't the most heavily guarded, it should be harder to attack than these places, right? Linglan, Jingyu said slowly. In that position, you can see as many people as you want. In these places, you can see as many people as you want, but in fact, it's not just a few people. Huh? When everyone heard Jingyu's words, they all blinked their eyes in a daze, their eyes filled with confusion. There are many people hiding in the shadows that you can't see. Jingyu lowered her eyes slightly and said, Do you still remember what Fang Ziqing said? Don't be deceived by appearances. This? How do you know? When the generals behind Shengwan Linglan heard Jingyu's words, they frowned and asked with disbelief in their eyes. I heard it. Jingyu said faintly. I heard their voices. I heard the sound of their feet stepping on the branches. I heard the sound of their swords rubbing against each other. There aren't just a few people there. When Jingyu finished speaking, everyone's eyes widened and they looked at Jingyu in a different light. Let's go. When Xiaochen heard Jingyu's words, he didn't seem surprised at all. He calmly led his men in the direction that Jingyu had pointed out. Before anyone could react, Xiaochen had already charged over. Chapter 1151. Jingyu didn't move forward. She stood not far away. If someone wanted to kill Jingyu, Jingyu wouldn't hesitate to swing the dagger in her hand and stab the person's fatal spot almost instantly. Xiaochen stood in the distance and glanced back at Jingyu from time to time. When he saw the dagger in Jingyu's hand and Jingyu's murderous actions, his lips curled into a faint smile. She was indeed the woman he fancied. Jingyu was right. There were indeed people hiding in the other two directions. After Jingyu and Xiaochen massacred, they turned and ran without a second thought. When the people there heard the commotion and chased after them, the only thing they could do was to collect the corpses. Jingyu took the initiative to check out the next few places they went. She was completely accurate with every check, and everyone was completely convinced. This night of killing passed by peacefully. None of them had ever felt so satisfied with killing. Hiding in the Roman forest, they all laughed loudly. Amidst the thin mist, the morning sun slowly rose. The Ninth Imperial Concubine is really amazing. A few generals were completely convinced by Jingyu. That's right. She's too amazing. Everyone was talking at once. I didn't expect the Ninth Imperial Concubine to be able to hear so accurately even though she can't see. Another young general said with a smile. Instantly, the originally lively frenzy froze for a brief moment. That young general's hand that was holding the long sword froze. He seemed to have thought of something, and a look of panic appeared in his eyes. That's right. My hearing is very good now. Jingyu nodded slowly and smiled. It's good that I can help everyone. Air! That young general scratched his head awkwardly. He heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Jingyu wasn't angry. However, when he turned his head, he met Xiao Qin's cold eyes. He was so shocked that his entire body trembled. He hurriedly crawled to the side and avoided Xiao Qin's gaze. I know I was wrong. Xiao Qin's eyes were filled with coldness. He gave that person a warning look and silently retracted his gaze. When he looked at Jingyu again, his gaze was incomparably gentle. Although Jingyu didn't care, Xiao Qin couldn't ignore it. After a tiring night, everyone leaned against the rocks under the trees to rest. They waited for the arrival of night to prepare for the second ambush. Jingyu and Xiao Qin also slept on the side of the rocks. In order to not expose their tracks, Jingyu, and even specially to cover their tracks. After sleeping for a while, everyone slowly woke up and began to eat. This place was undoubtedly hidden. When night fell, everyone began to check their belongings. However, just as everyone was preparing, Jingyu, who had been sitting quietly by the side, suddenly straightened her body. What's wrong? Shengguan Linglan was helping Jingyu put away the dagger. When he saw Jingyu's actions, he was slightly startled and asked with a frown. Someone is coming. Jingyu suddenly stood up. When Jingyu finished speaking, everyone also stood up and looked into the dense forest. I told you to cover up your tracks. Did you cover them up? Jingyu's brain worked quickly as she suddenly asked this question. She didn't name anyone and didn't turn around. She just asked this question. The soldier was slightly taken aback when he heard this. Chapter 1152. Since you're here, why don't you stay and chat before you leave? Just as everyone was about to leave, a cold voice suddenly rang out in the night, exploding in everyone's ears. Just as this voice rang out, countless footsteps rang out from the forest and instantly surrounded Jingyu and Xiao Qin's group. Under the gaze of Xiao Qin's group, a figure slowly walked out from the forest. Her fiery red clothes were extremely dazzling under the light of the torches. Her beautiful and enchanting face caused everyone to freeze. Nailing you. The moment Jingyu heard this voice, she already knew who it was. Her expression instantly changed, and she fiercely clenched her fists. You guys really made it difficult for me to find you. Nailing you was wearing red clothes as she stood beside the torches. Her fiery red lips slowly curled into a charming smile. She narrowed her eyes as she looked in the direction of Xiao Qin and Jingyu. A cold light flashed in her eyes. You guys hurry up and leave. I'll block her. Shengguan Linglan didn't even think as he suddenly stepped forward. He held his sword in front of him and stared at Nailing you as he spoke. Leave? Where do you think you can go? Nailing you's eyes were filled with disdain as she looked at Xiao Qin and Jingyu. Seeing Xiao Qin's actions of protecting Jingyu, she fiercely clenched her teeth. Xiao Qin, you actually dared to deceive me. Nailing you was probably talking about the matter of him and Xing Yi swapping places. This bitch doesn't have any other pupils now. She's just blind and useless. Why do you still want to be with her? Nailing you pointed her finger at Jingyu and said, as long as you get rid of this woman, you can still be the high and mighty 9th emperors. You don't need to hide everywhere, and you won't get hurt. Why? Why do you want to be with her? How am I, Nailing you, inferior to her? Nailing you's eyes were filled with viciousness as she walked towards Jingyu and Xiao Qin. This finger of yours, I'll take it. When Xiao Qin heard Nailing you's words, his expression didn't change at all. However, when he heard Nailing you's words, the hand holding Jingyu slightly tightened as he slowly spat out these words. Charge out of here. Shengguan Linglan's face turned cold. Since you guys can't wait, I'll grant you your wish. Nailing you's face was filled with viciousness as she looked at Xiao Qin's group's actions. Kill them. As soon as the order was given, the people around him all rushed towards Xiao Qin's group. Once again, they surrounded them in the forest. The fire was burning, and the sound of blood dripping was so clear. Linglan, you're injured. Jingyu suddenly turned her head to look at Shangguan Linglan. Don't talk, let's go. Shangguan Linglan tilted his head and viciously killed a person. Xiao Chen's group was completely scattered in this encirclement. They wanted to charge out of the forest, but they couldn't move at all. They could only charge into the forest. Nailanyu had really gone all out this time. Jingyu and Xiao Chen's group finally managed to charge out of the encirclement with great difficulty. They had only run a short distance when Yun Tian and Yun Jing blocked their path once again. Chapter 1153. Damn it. Xiao Chun led Jingyu in a certain direction while Shangguan Linglan and Xing air chased in another direction in order to lure Yun Tian and Yun Jing away. The distance between the two groups grew wider and wider. Jingyu leaned against a boulder and panted heavily. Xiao Chun slowly withdrew his gaze from the distant scenery and sighed deeply. He'd finally shaken them off. Raindrops fell one by one, disrupting Jingyu's hearing in this quiet forest. The cold from her body made Jingyu lean towards Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun could feel Jingyu's dependence and reached out to pull Jingyu into his embrace. Let's find a place to take shelter from the rain. Xiao Chun held Jingyu and walked forward. Jingyu nodded. The two of them walked for a while before finally finding a cave to take shelter from the rain. They stopped in the middle of the cave. In order to avoid being discovered by the enemy, they couldn't light a bonfire for warmth. Jingyu and Xiao Chun could only stay like this, allowing themselves to be drenched as they hugged each other for warmth. After a night of hiding and restlessness, the rain finally stopped at daybreak. The poison sect shouldn't be chasing us now. Xiao Chun exhaled deeply and said, "Wait for me here. I'll go find some food." Jingyu frowned slightly, but didn't refuse. She nodded and obediently sat in the cave, listening to Xiao Chen's footsteps as he left. She slowly suppressed the unease in her heart. Time trickled by. Jingyu quietly listened to the sounds outside, wanting to know when Xiao Chun would return. But after listening for a long time, she didn't hear Xiao Chen's return. Instead, she heard a flurry of footsteps. Jingyu's heart shook violently. She shot to her feet and ran out of the cave. She wanted to run outside, but since she couldn't see, she couldn't tell if there were trees or rocks in the way. Ah! Jingyu tripped over a rock and fell to the ground. Found it. Jingyu's voice had successfully attracted people over. Jingyu could clearly hear footsteps approaching. Jingyu, let's see where you can run off to this time. Nailanyu's voice sounded like a ghost in Jingyu's ears. Jingyu's eyes narrowed, and she lowered her head without a word. Yun Tian's voice also spoke. So, you really are blind. At this moment, everyone was staring at Jingyu, who was miserably lying on the ground. It wasn't hard to see that if it was the previous Jingyu, it would be easy for her to escape under these circumstances. But now, she was in such a sorry state. So what if I am? Jingyu's lips curled into a mocking smile. She disdainfully said, I'm really glad that I can't see. Otherwise, if I saw your faces, I would be so disgusted that I wouldn't be able to eat. What a sharp tongue. When Yun Tian heard Jingyu's words, his expression suddenly changed. He angrily said, Let's see how a blind person like you can go against us. Jingyu turned her head away and didn't say anything. What are you all standing there for? Capture her. Nailanyu's expression turned cold as she looked at the crowd and suddenly shouted. Yes. When those people heard Nailanyu's order, they all came forward. Jingyu knew that she couldn't resist this time. At this moment, there was only one thought in her mind. Xiao Chun, don't be stupid. Chapter 1154. Just as those people were getting close to Jingyu's ears twitched. A gray figure suddenly jumped out from the bushes and charged towards Jingyu. It rushed straight to Jingyu's side and let out a low roar. Ah! Screams filled her ears, and Jingyu felt the warmth of fresh blood splattering onto the back of her hand. Jingyu sat there in a daze. The familiar roar and the cries of Jingyu and the others sounded in her ears. Jingyu's body trembled slightly, and her eyes widened. Jian, is that you? Jingyu's voice trembled slightly. Whoa! A soft whimper sounded, and Jingyu felt a familiar warm tongue licking the back of her hand. Jian! Jian! Jingyu raised her hand and patted Jian's head. Her eyes filled with joy. Kill these two animals for me. Nalan Yu's roar sounded out, and Jingyu's heart tightened. She quickly stood up and jumped onto Jian's back. She opened her mouth and shouted, "Let's go!" Jian roared and brought Jingyu out of the encirclement. Behind him, Feng blocked everyone. Once he found an opening, he also leaped into the dense forest and disappeared. Trash. A bunch of trash. Nalan Yu looked at Jingyu leaving, and her eyes filled with anger. She shouted, "Why are there wolves? Isn't Jingyu blind? Why can she still command wolves?" Nalan Yu was going crazy this time. She originally thought that no one would be able to save Jingyu, but she didn't expect that at such a critical moment, wolves would appear again. Jingyu sat on Jian's back. For the first time in a long time, she felt a very, very warm feeling. That familiar fur made Jingyu smile. Sitting on Jian's back, Jingyu missed the familiar feeling of running through the forest. She bent down slightly and touched Jian's soft fur. Jian brought Jingyu to an unknown place and then stopped. Jingyu slowly got off Jian's back and stepped on the soft grass. When she landed, she felt the two wolves intimately close to Jingyu. Jian, Feng. Jingyu touched the two wolves and carefully identified their fur. Even if she couldn't see the faces of the two wolves, Jingyu could clearly tell which one was Jian and which one was Feng. Jian and Feng wagged their tails and rubbed against Jingyu's body. The sound coming from their mouths was so familiar. Although Jingyu didn't know what Jian and Feng wanted to express, she seemed to know that the two wolves were happy at this moment. The way they rubbed against Jingyu made Jingyu's face full of smiles. On the grassland, Jingyu hugged the two gray wolves. She suddenly felt a sense of joy, as if she had regained what she had lost. "You guys are still here. It's so good." Jingyu sighed slightly and said, "I thought I would never see you guys again. Why can you guys still find me?" The two wolves called out, but Jingyu couldn't understand what they wanted to say. Sure enough, it wasn't because of the different pupils. Jingyu's eyes drooped slightly, and her expression was a bit complicated. So it wasn't because of her, but because the two wolves came back by themselves? Or was there some other reason? She originally thought it was because of the different pupils. Chapter 1155. That's right. What was she thinking about now that the different pupil had disappeared? Jingyu laughed at herself. She used to hope that the different pupil would disappear, but now that the different pupil had really disappeared, Jingyu was not used to it. She was unwilling to accept it, because the different pupil had brought her so much joy and tears. How could Jingyu forget it so easily? Jingyu sighed deeply. She did not know where she was, so she could only sit on the grass and hope that Xiaoqin could find her. Xiaoqin had followed the clues from the cave and searched everywhere, but he could not find Jingyu. After a moment of silence, he suddenly remembered that Jingyu would often climb up a tall tree in the forest. Xiaoqin thought for a moment, then decisively climbed up the tree. Standing on the tree trunk, Xiaoqin discovered the mystery. When standing on the ground, one could not see the places where the gray wolves had run through, but standing on the tree trunk, one could easily see them. Xiaoqin's eyes lit up, and he quickly leaped up the tree trunk. Finally, he saw Jingyu sitting on the grass and the two gray wolves beside Jingyu. Under the sun, Jingyu sat quietly on the grass beside the pond, and the two gray wolves were playing around. This scene was so familiar. When he first met Jingyu, he often saw this scene. Jian and Feng, who had always been by Jingyu's side. Kacha! Xiaoqin took a step forward and accidentally stepped on a branch on the ground, breaking the silence. Who? Jingyu suddenly turned her head and looked in the direction of Xiaoqin, her face full of killing intent. However, Jingyu was met with silence. Xiao Chun, it's you. Jing Yu was stunned for a moment. Then the corners of her mouth curled into a faint smile. Xiao Chun did not say a word, and Jing Yu could not see anything, but she could say this with such certainty. Xiao Chen's calm face revealed a faint smile. Xiao Chen responded and walked towards Jing Yu. I thought you would need a few days to find me. Jing Yu heard Xiao Chen's footsteps approaching her and raised her head slightly to look at Xiao Chun. Am I that bad in your eyes? Xiao Chen seemed to be very dissatisfied. He raised his hand and touched Jing Yu's cheek, wiping away the dust on her face. Ah! Jing Yu laughed when she heard this. Her curved eyebrows easily stirred up Xiao Chen's mood. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly as she said, We should go. Otherwise, we will be in trouble if the pursuers catch up. Jing Yu stood up with Xiao Chen's help and walked forward. The two gray wolves followed behind them. But Yin Jian and Yin Feng. Xiao Chen took 2 steps forward and stopped. He tilted his head slightly and looked at the 2 gray wolves, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, with some hesitation. I don't know either. Jing Yu frowned when she heard this. She said with a conflicted expression, They saved me, but I don't know why they appeared. Xiao Chen's eyes flashed when he heard this. He slowly said, Forget it, let's go. Xiao Chun led Jing Yu all the way out of the forest. Fortunately, the 2 gray wolves, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, did not take Jing Yu very far away. It was only a day's journey out of the forest. When they reached the outskirts of the forest, Jing Yu did not bring Yin Jian and Yin Feng into the city. Chapter 1156. I don't have any special pupils now. If I can't control them, it won't be good if I hurt someone. Jing Yu replied to Xiao Chun. Outside the forest, Jing Yu left the 2 big guys in the forest. She then entered the city with Xiao Chun. Shangwan Linglan and the others had already returned. They were originally very worried about Jing Yu and Xiao Chun. Now that they saw that Jing Yu and Xiao Chun had returned safely, they heaved a sigh of relief. They had originally wanted to send people to search for them. Now that they saw that Jing Yu and Xiao Chun had returned safely, they finally heaved a sigh of relief. After 2 days and 1 night of exhaustion, they finally calmed down after returning to Jiling Town. Jing Yu and the others rested for a long time. They only woke up the next day. When Jing Yu woke up, Xiao Chun was no longer beside her. Jing Yu, you're awake? A familiar voice sounded beside Jing Yu. Jing Yu's yawning hand suddenly stopped. She blinked and said, Yi Shui, why are you here? The person in the room was Yi Shui, whom she hadn't seen in a long time. She was dressed in dark purple clothes, outlining Yi Shui's graceful figure. She stood in front of Jing Yu's door. When she saw that Jing Yu had woken up, she stepped forward and supported Jing Yu's arm. The 9th emperors went to discuss matters with General Shangguan and the others. I came to take care of you, Yi Shui said as she helped Jing Yu sit down on a chair. How could I trouble you? Jing Yu sat down on a chair and smiled embarrassedly. Have you been waiting outside for a long time? I was in the room the whole time and didn't know you were outside. Why didn't you wake me up earlier? It's all right. Yi Shui paused and looked at Jing Yu's lifeless eyes. She frowned and asked, Your eyes? Oh. Jing Yu touched her eyes and said, It's nothing. It can be cured. Although Yi Shui hadn't been able to visit Jing Yu due to some matters, she had heard about Jing Yu's eyes from others. Now that she saw Jing Yu's lifeless eyes, she sighed with pity. Back in the desert, Jing Yu's different colored eyes were so dazzling. How did they become like this in the blink of an eye? Let's not talk about me. Let's talk about you. Jing Yu frowned as she looked at Yi Shui and said, You still don't know where White Nine is? No. When Yi Shui heard White Nine's name, she sighed deeply and said, I don't know why, but I feel like White Nine is hiding from me. Jing Yu was slightly taken aback when she heard Yi Shui's words. She blinked her eyes in confusion. When I received the news and went to the Tokyo Imperial City, I saw White Nine. Although I only saw him for a split second, I knew it was him. But for some reason, White Nine avoided me when he saw me. Along the way, I've been chasing after him. However, I've never been able to catch up to him. Along the way, whenever I get injured or something happens, I'll be saved by someone. I know that it must be White Nine. But no matter what I did, White Nine didn't want to show up. Yi Shui clenched her fists tightly. Her heart was filled with unwillingness. Yi Shui. Jingyu held Yi Shui's hand and sighed deeply. She said, "Don't worry, White Nine might have his reasons." Chapter 1157. Yi Shui fell silent after hearing Jingyu's words. She sighed and said, "I just want to know if Qin Bai is still alive. Now that I know he's alive and well, I'm relieved. As for whether Bai Jiu wants to see me or not," Yi Shui said, "that's his own business. I can't force him." Jingyu fell silent after hearing that. The two of them sat quietly on the chair and didn't speak again until they heard another set of footsteps approaching, breaking the silence between them. "Madam!" Xing Er quickly jumped to Jingyu's side and said, "I just received news that Lord Qinggu is back with Xing Yi." "They're back? When?" Jingyu's eyes were filled with joy when she heard Second Xing's words, and she asked joyfully, "They'll arrive in Jinling in about half a month." Xing Er was obviously happy as well. Jingyu could hear the joy in Xing Er's voice. Qinggu was finally coming back. The Chinese New Year had passed for a long time. Spring was coming and everything was recovering. The weather was gradually getting warmer. Ever since the incident with Yin Jian and Yin Feng, Jingyu couldn't help but want to run into the forest. It was like an unbreakable bond that kept Jingyu and Yin Jian and Yin Feng in the Roman forest. Today was the same as usual. Jingyu changed into a new set of clothes and went out with Yi Shui. Recently, Xiao Chun and Shengwan Linglan were busy fighting the enemy. Jingyu couldn't help, so she went into the Roman forest. Recently, Jingyu had a strong feeling that something was wrong with Yin Jian and Yin Feng's return. Why was that? In the forest, Jingyu easily came to a rock. There, the two wolves, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, were playing by the pond. Yi Shui stood behind Jingyu and narrowed her eyes when she saw this scene. "Let's go down," Jingyu said as she stretched out her hand. Yi Shui went up to support Jingyu and led her to the grass. When she saw the two wolves rushing over and playing with Jingyu, she frowned slightly. Just as she was about to step forward, she accidentally stepped on something. "Jingyu, is this your purse?" Yi Shui bent down to pick it up and called out to Jingyu. Purse?" Jingyu was stunned for a moment and walked towards Yi Shui. Yi Shui placed the purse in Jingyu's hand. Jingyu touched it slightly and reached out to take out the item in the purse. It was a piece of paper. Jingyu touched the paper in her hand and suddenly thought of something. Her eyes widened slightly and she said, "Yi Shui, help me take a look. What is written in this purse?" "Let me see." Yi Shui took the item in Jingyu's hand and frowned slightly. She said, "Taming beasts as kings can contain the world." As expected, Jingyu's eyes lit up. This piece of paper was the two sentences that Jingyu had asked Qinggu to copy down. Because she didn't know what it meant, Jingyu stuffed it into the purse and wondered when she would be able to decipher it. She had forgotten about it and didn't expect it to fall out today. It must have fallen out when she was playing with Yin Jian and Yin Feng. Chapter 1158. What does this mean? Yi Shui frowned and asked curiously. "I don't know." Jingyu shook her head and replied. She held the note in her hand and sat on the grass with her knees slightly bent. She subconsciously touched the note in her hand and fell in a deep thought. Yi Shui looked at Jingyu and frowned. Jingyu sat quietly on the grass and listened to the playful voices of Yin Jian and Yin Feng. She felt the wind blow past her cheeks. Jingyu slowly closed her eyes. Her vision was still pitch black. In Jingyu's mind, that sentence kept echoing. Jingyu's body swayed slightly. She seemed to have thought of something and fell in a deep thought. Taming beasts as kings could accommodate the world. What was the meaning of this sentence? Taming beasts as kings was not a difficult mystery in the world. Jingyu thought quietly. In everyone's eyes, taming beasts was taming wild beasts. There were many types of beasts such as jackals, wolves, tigers, leopards, and so on in the forest. The power of the mystic pupil was taming beasts. The ability to be the king of beasts? Taming beasts, taming beasts. Jingyu slowly opened her eyes. Was taming beasts really just taming wild beasts? Why would wild beasts listen to her? Why would they feel the same way? Jingyu fell into a daze. To Jingyu, rather than taming wild beasts, it was better to say that she treated these wild beasts as her friends and befriended them. Jingyu had always had this thought when she was growing up. Just like how Yin Jian and Yin Feng were friends, family, and companions who grew up with her. Taming beasts? No, not taming beasts. It was taming beasts. Jingyu's eyes lit up. If she treated herself as a member of the wild beasts, she would be like the king of beasts, like the leader of wild wolves, like the king of lions. They were of the same species, and thus had the ability to tame beasts. I understand. Jingyu's heart was burning with passion. Her heart trembled as she spoke slowly. Taming beasts as kings. King of beasts. King of beasts. So it's this king. Jingyu's heart was beating bit by bit. Her heart was filled with excitement. Her face was flushed red, and the paper in her hand was tightly held by Jingyu. Yi Shui stood behind Jingyu and listened to Jingyu's soft murmurs. Her eyes were filled with confusion. She completely didn't understand what Jingyu meant. Jingyu sat there silently and didn't move at all. She sat there for the entire morning. Yi Shui called Jingyu for a long time, but she didn't respond. She had no choice but to find some food herself. She turned to look at Jingyu, who was surrounded by Yin Jian and Yin Feng, and felt at ease. With Yin Jian and Yin Feng here, nothing should happen to Jingyu, right? Yi Shui turned to leave, but Jingyu still sat there. The sun was still blazing above her head. Jingyu slowly closed her eyes and thought over and over again about how she had tamed the wild beasts. Her eyes flickered with a different expression. Her heart was beating faster and faster. Taming beasts as kings could contain the world. Could contain the world. Could contain the world. But in Jingyu's heart, there had never been a world. Huh? Jingyu laughed absent-mindedly and said, if the heart doesn't contain the world, what is there to contain? Chapter 1159. Are you telling me that I am not destined to become the king of beast tamers? Jingyu's heart trembled violently. A strong sense of unwillingness spread throughout Jingyu's heart. Why? Why must those with different pupils accept everyone in the world? Everyone in the world humiliates me, scolds me, and fears me. Why must I accept everyone in the world? Why? Jingyu clenched her fists tightly. Jingyu's past experiences flashed through her mind. She had carefully concealed her different pupils so that she could enjoy the rare familial love. But why? She clearly did not do anything. But the moment she revealed her abnormal pupils, she was banished and abandoned by the people of the world. Now, in the end, she was the one who had to accept the world. Why? Why did she have to do this? Jingyu's heart was filled with unwillingness. She clenched her fist tightly. No! Jingyu's face was filled with viciousness. In those dark eyes, Jingyu seemed to see the faces of those people. Those faces of fear, those faces of disgust, and those faces that wanted nothing more than to kill her. The world is nothing. Jingyu's eyes shone with a terrifying light. If I want to, so what if the world is destroyed? Jingyu's eyes were filled with viciousness. Being able to accept the world doesn't mean that I can't overturn it. Huh? Jingyu threw her head back and laughed loudly. The king of beast tamers can overturn the world. Haha, can overturn the world. Jingyu's heart, which had been suppressed, completely relaxed at this moment. This sentence should be changed. What do you mean by being able to accept the world? Jingyu stood up slowly. The light in her eyes was so scorching that it seemed to set the world on fire. That aura of hers was terrifying. Jingyu felt the blood in her body boiling. This boiling feeling was getting hotter and hotter. When Jingyu realized that something was wrong, there was an explosion in her brain. What's going on in my body? This burning feeling was so familiar that Jingyu immediately thought of it. Why is it happening again? Jingyu felt a little uncomfortable as she placed her hand on her chest. The burning sensation that came from her chest made her heart tremble violently. This feeling was all too familiar to her. Before Jingyu was born, Jingyu's body would experience this change every year at a certain time. Jingyu never felt this change after the golden eye appeared outside the Tokyo Imperial City. Why? Why did it suddenly appear at such a time? Jingyu clutched her clothes tightly. The burning feeling in her body made Jingyu groan in pain. She fell to the ground and her forehead was covered with sweat. Her eyes were filled with pain. She closed her eyes tightly and curled up into a ball on the grass. The two gray wolves by Jingyu's side, Silver Arrow and Silver Wind, also retreated to the side in panic. Jingyu could not see anything in the darkness, but she could vaguely see a pair of eyes flashing. Those eyes were so familiar and so dazzling. Chapter 1160. What is this? Jingyu's blood was boiling. The burning sensation instantly spread throughout Jingyu's body. Ah! Jingyu couldn't help but scream. Jingyu's scream seemed to have startled the birds in the forest. It also startled Yi Shui, who was hanging on a tree and picking fruits not far away. This voice is... Yi Shui's voice sounded a little doubtful. Then, she seemed to have thought of something, and her face suddenly changed. Jingyu! Yi Shui's eyes narrowed. She suddenly jumped down from the tree and ran towards Jingyu. At this moment, Jingyu had curled up her body, as if she thought that this would lessen the pain in her body. However, this was of no use. The burning sensation seemed to be looking for an opening and was crazily surging in Jingyu's body. It's so hot. Ah! Jingyu's consciousness was about to become blurry. She lifted her hands and pulled off her clothes as if she was trying to untie something. Ah! Jingyu's scream was so terrifying. This time, Yi Shui heard it even more clearly. She suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her eyes were filled with panic. She lifted her feet and ran even faster towards Jingyu. The pool was shaking. Jingyu used all her strength to jump into the pool and sink into the water. In the pool, there were some aquatic plants and fish swimming in the water. Jingyu jumped into the pool and held her breath. It seemed that the temperature in her body was slowly dropping in this cold water. However, this feeling didn't last for more than a few seconds. Jingyu felt an even more burning sensation surging out of Jingyu's body. Jingyu's eyes suddenly widened. Her pitch-black eyes saw nothing but darkness. The burning sensation surging out of her body rushed straight to her brain. Jingyu's brain was temporarily blank under this intense impact. Her ears seemed to be filled with a roaring sound, and her body's consciousness was slowly dissipating. Jingyu's body slowly sank into the pool without any resistance. This scene was so familiar. However, as Jingyu sank, pitch-black blood flowed out of her mouth and nose. The blood wasn't red. It was black. Under the rinsing of the pool water, it slowly dissipated. The calm pool water regained its tranquility. It was as if none of this had happened. Yi Shui rushed here as fast as she could, but all she saw was an empty plain. There was no sign of Jingyu, nor were there any sounds from Yin Jian and Yin Feng. At this moment, Yi Shui's mind was blank. She looked at the empty lawn and spun around. She couldn't understand why Jingyu had disappeared. What was that cry about? Just when Yi Shui was confused, there was a commotion in the bushes. The heads of the two gray wolves, Yin Jian and Yin Feng, popped out. Yi Shui's eyes widened. She looked at the two big guys, Yin Jian and Yin Feng. There were no wounds on their bodies, nor were there any signs of fighting. Did that mean that Jingyu hadn't been taken away? If someone wanted to take Jingyu, how could Yin Jian and Yin Feng let it go? Chapter 1161. Oh, Silver Arrow and Silver Wind seemed to be very anxious as they circled around the pool. When Yi Shui saw this scene, her gaze slowly landed on the calm pool, looking at the surface without any ripples. Yi Shui then looked at the movements of Silver Arrow and Windward Wolf. Suddenly, as if she had thought of something, Yi Shui's eyes abruptly widened. Without thinking, she directly charged into the pool and sank into the water. At the bottom of the ice-cold water, Yi Shui could clearly see Jingyu sleeping at the bottom of the pool with her eyes tightly closed. Quick! Quick! Find Miracle Dr. Qingge! Jinling Town fell into an incomparable panic. Yi Shui was drenched from head to toe, her hair stuck tightly to her cheeks. Her face was full of panic, and her eyes seemed to be bloodshot. As soon as she entered the town, she started shouting loudly. The panic in her voice was terrifying. Yi Shui carried Jingyu on her back and rushed into the house to place Jingyu on the bed. When Xiao Chun, Shengwan Linglan, and the rest heard the news and rushed over, Qingge had also just arrived. What's going on? Xiao Chun looked at Yi Shui, who was standing at the side, drenched. He then looked at Jingyu, who was lying on the bed with a pale face and drenched body. His heart trembled violently as he asked. Yi Shui shook her head silently and said, I don't know. Jingyu, she jumped into the pool. When I was looking for food, I don't know why. Yi Shui slowly lowered her eyes and clenched her fists tightly. What? When Xiao Chun heard Yi Shui's words, his brain short-circuited. What did she mean by jumping into the pool? Suicide? Xiao Chen's body shook violently. He watched Qing Ji's face become extremely ugly. He slowly withdrew his hand that was taking her pulse and gently put Jingyu's hand back to its original position. He sat silently beside Jingyu's bed for a long time without moving. What's wrong with Jingyu? Xiao Chen asked tentatively. Dead. Qingge was silent for a long time before he slowly spat out these two words. These two words were like a bomb that instantly exploded in everyone's hearts. Everyone's eyes widened at this moment as they stared in disbelief at Qingge, who was slowly standing up. His heartbeat, pulse, and breathing have all stopped. There is water in his mouth and nose. This is drowning. Qingge felt as if he had stabbed a knife into everyone's heart as he spat out such bloody words. What the fuck did you say? Xiao Chun was instantly enraged. He raised his hand and grabbed Qing Ji's collar, almost lifting Qingge up. The fury in his eyes was very obvious. Ninth brother. Qing Ji's eyes reddened slightly as he choked out. Ninth sister-in-law. She really. Get lost. Get lost. Xiao Chun pushed Qingge aside as if he had gone crazy. He staggered towards Jingyu's bed and saw Jingyu's pale face and tightly shut eyes. Jingyu? Xiao Chun reached out with a trembling hand and caressed Jingyu's face. His hand came into contact with Jingyu's ice-cold face. The icy temperature was so frightening that Xiao Chen's hand suddenly shrank back. His beating heart also stopped for a moment, and his eyes were filled with panic. Jingyu, open your eyes. Xiao Chen reached out and held Jingyu's face, his eyes filled with panic. Chapter 1162. In Xiao Chen's hands, Jingyu wasn't breathing at all, nor was there a heartbeat. She didn't even have a pulse. Her cold body lay motionless on the bed. No matter how much Xiao Chun yelled, it was to no avail. Ninth brother, it's no use. Qingge fiercely turned his head away and said, Ninth sister is dead. Shut up. Xiao Chen's eyes were dyed with an incomparably ferocious red. He suddenly turned his head and glared at Qingge fiercely as he roared, Jingyu, she isn't dead. Everyone in the room fell silent. They all lowered their heads and looked at Xiao Chun and Jingyu lying on the bed. Their hearts throbbed with pain. Jingyu's mind was blank. He stood stiffly on the spot and stared blankly at Jingyu lying on the bed. His brain couldn't wrap itself around the situation. She was fine in the morning. How could she know? You or wouldn't commit suicide. Jinglang shook his head fiercely and said, "How could you commit suicide?" But Yi Shue's body trembled slightly as she said with great difficulty, "Jingyu was with the two gray wolves. There were no signs of anyone else around, nor were there any signs of fighting. There could only be one possibility. Jingyu jumped into the pool of water herself?" Xiaochen slowly fell silent. His pitch-black eyes flashed with an icy light. Ninth brother, Qingge was still covered in dust. In order to cure Jingyu's eyes as quickly as possible, Qingge had rushed all the way to Jinling. Xiao Chun had been happy for a long time because of Qingji's return. Originally, he thought that when Jingyu came back, she would be very happy to see Qingge. Finally, he could cure Jingyu's eyes. But who would have thought that in just a few hours, it would become like this? Could it be that Jingyu committed suicide because she couldn't bear the sight of her eyes? Yi Shui seemed to have thought of something as she asked, her body trembling slightly. Impossible. Shangguan Linglan clenched his teeth and said, if Jingyu cared so much about her eyes, why would she train so hard to help everyone? Why not? Yi Shui clenched her fists and looked sideways at Jingyu, who was lying on the bed, and said, you should know that Jingyu didn't just lose her eyes. She also lost the ability of her other pupils. Yi Shui's words struck everyone hard in their hearts. They suddenly recalled everything that had happened over the past few days. Silence. A deathly silence. Everyone was silent. Xiaochen slowly lowered his eyes. His eyes, which were staring at Jingyu, seemed to be filled with a terrifying emotion. Under everyone's gaze, Xiaochen stood up unsteadily. His body swayed slightly as he walked past Jingyu step by step toward the door without saying a word. Everyone looked at Xiaochen's appearance. Their hearts trembled and they turned their heads away in surprise. Master, Xing'er looked at Xiaochen's appearance and frowned uneasily. Xiaochen walked step by step to the door. His pitch-black eyes were as cold as ice, and his face quickly flushed red. Under everyone's fearful gaze, Xiaochen suddenly held onto the door frame and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Chapter 1163. Brother Jiu. Qingge darted over and tried to hold Xiaochen. However, Xiaochen flung his hand away. Piss off! Xiaochen's violent eyes were filled with a strong bloodlust. He flung Qingji's hand away, then staggered and leaned against the door without moving. The others couldn't bear to see Xiaochen like this. No one thought that things would turn out like this. How could Jingyu die? She had been doing so well. Could it be that Jingyu had disguised herself too well? In fact, in Jingyu's heart, she already found it hard to accept. No, that was impossible. Jingyu wasn't that kind of person. Shangguan Linglan clenched his fists and turned to look at Jingyu. His eyes glowed with a fierce light, as if he was thinking about something. Then he walked out of Jinling City and headed toward the Roman forest. The sky darkened bit by bit. Xiaochen sat on a chair in the living room. He lowered his head and didn't say a word. There were drops of blood on his body. Xing'er stood beside Xiaochen. Looking at Xiaochen, he frowned deeply. Master! Xing'er stayed silent for a long while, then finally called him. Jingyu won't die. Xiaochen slowly raised his head. His eyes glowed with determination. Xiaochen. While Xiaochen and Xing'er were silent, a shout was heard from outside. Shangguan Linglan ran in while gasping for breath. His eyes were filled with panic. Xiaochen looked at Shangguan Linglan and slightly clenched his fists. I went to the Roman forest and found this. Shangguan Linglan stood in front of Xiaochen and handed the thing in his hand to Xiaochen. This is... Xiaochen looked at the thing that Shangguan Linglan handed to him. It was a wet piece of paper. Beast taming as king, able to contain the world. Xiaochen slowly read out the contents of the paper. Shangguan Linglan then explained the origin of this thing. After listening to Shangguan Linglan's explanation, Xiaochen's expression froze for a moment. Jingyu went to the Roman forest because of this? Xiaochen's expression turned cold. I don't know. Shangwan Linglan looked down with trembling eyes and said, "Could it be that this thing provoked Jingyu? She actually lost her other pupil, so she took things too hard?" When Xiao Chun heard Shangwan Linglan's words, his hands trembled violently. He then shook his head firmly and said, "No, that's impossible. But other than this, there's really no other explanation." Shangwan Linglan was so anxious that he was about to cry. Xiao Chun looked down at the paper in his hand and slowly fell silent. If he had been agitated a while ago, Xiao Chun had already calmed down. He looked down at the paper in his hand. His intuition kept telling Xiao Chun that Jingyu was definitely not dead. There must be something hidden within. But Qing Ji's diagnosis was indeed correct. Jingyu was dead. Why was this? Why Xiao Chun gripped the thing in his hand even tighter? The atmosphere in the room was so silent that it was a little scary. However, just as everyone was still thinking about Jingyu, the main character that everyone was worried about was lying quietly on the bed. Two guards were standing guard outside the side room, where Xiao Chun and Jingyu were. Chapter 1164. Jingyu felt as though she had sunk into an endless abyss of darkness and coldness. Jingyu's body continued to fall. Jingyu's entire body seemed to have lost all strength. She desperately tried to grab onto something to stop herself from falling, but there was nothing that she could grab onto. Jingyu was extremely disgusted by this feeling. She furrowed her brows tightly, as though she was making a final struggle. Just as Jingyu was about to make a move, she suddenly saw a pair of eyes flash in the darkness. That pair of eyes was a dark green color, aloof and cold, like a lone wolf in the forest. Jingyu was in a daze for a moment, and in the blink of an eye, she saw another pair of eyes. That pair of golden eyes was dazzling and moving. They were passionate and majestic, emitting a strong sense of majesty. They were like the Lion King of the grasslands, incomparably majestic. The two pairs of eyes kept swaying in the darkness, circling around Jingyu. Finally, under Jingyu's gaze, the two pairs of eyes overlapped. The golden eyes overlapped with the green eyes, hazy and moving. Jingyu didn't know what kind of emotion drove her. When she saw those eyes, Jingyu's hand actually reached out uncontrollably towards those eyes. Jingyu seemed to feel the warmth of those eyes, and her heart trembled slightly. In that dark and quiet room, Jingyu's heart, which had stopped beating when Xinggu announced her pulse and heart, suddenly started to beat steadily and powerfully in her chest. Her blood, which seemed to have solidified, started to flow little by little at this moment. In the darkness, when Jingyu's fingers came into contact with the eyes floating in the air, she suddenly felt a piercing pain on her fingertips. Then, the pain seemed to be transmitted directly from her fingertips to Jingyu's eyes. That intense piercing pain caused Jingyu to suddenly close her eyes and cry out in pain. She suddenly sat up. He sat up? Jingyu blinked her eyes in a daze. Her fingers moved slightly, and she turned her head stiffly. The chill that came from her body made Jingyu slowly regain her consciousness. Jingyu's brain short-circuited for a moment. She opened her eyes and sized up the situation in front of her in a daze. This white curtain. Then, she lowered her head to look at her clothes and the white cloth covering her body. White cloth? Wait a minute. Why cover her with a white cloth? Oh my God! Am I dead? Jingyu's mind went blank. She stood up silently and stepped on the ground. Jingyu blinked and looked at her feet. Then, she jumped twice and said in confusion, "Isn't he dead? Why isn't it floating?" Jingyu touched her arm. It was warm. He didn't die. Just as Jingyu was about to leave, she suddenly stopped as if she had seen a ghost. What did she just do? She could actually see. Jingyu finally realized this fact in horror. Her eyes kept blinking. Jingyu rushed to the side of the bronze mirror and blinked to look at herself in the mirror. She was dressed in white, and her face was slightly pale. The most terrifying thing for Jingyu was her eyes. The eyes reflected in the bronze mirror were a pair of golden eyes with a hazy dark green glow. Wasn't this pair of eyes the one in Jing Yu's consciousness? Warm and cold. Chapter 1165. Jing Yu's eyes widened slightly. She raised her hand and pulled her face. Finally, she was sure that she wasn't dreaming. A look of ecstasy suddenly appeared in Jing Yu's eyes. Her heart couldn't help but tremble. Every beat was so clear. The two guards at the door heard the commotion in the room the moment Jing Yu woke up. "Did you hear anything just now?" A tall and skinny guard asked the person beside him. He glanced at the commotion behind him and frowned slightly. "Why do I think I heard someone talking?" "Hey, what nonsense are you talking about?" The other guard's face turned pale when he heard that. He hurriedly said, "The person inside is the 9th Imperial Concubine." During the day, Miracle Dr. Qing Gu diagnosed that the 9th Imperial Concubine is already dead. The guard spoke cautiously. "I was the one who covered the 9th Imperial Concubine with the white cloth. I secretly checked and found that she really wasn't breathing." "See?" The guard lowered his head when he heard that. He thought that he must have been hallucinating after standing for so long. Clang! Just as the guard thought that, he suddenly heard the sound of something falling to the ground. There seemed to be footsteps as well. Footsteps! The guard was so scared that his entire body trembled. The two of them looked at each other. This time, both of them had heard it. With such a loud sound, even if they wanted to think that they had heard wrongly, it was impossible. Both of their eyes were filled with panic. The two of them had been guarding this place the entire time. Of course, no one had entered. Since no one had entered, why would there be footsteps in the room? There was only a corpse lying in the room. Then this sound, the two of them seemed to have thought of the same thing. Their faces turned pale instantly, and they swallowed hard. "Let's go in and take a look." The two guards plucked up their courage and walked into the room. In this pitch-black room, only 2 candles were emitting light. The two of them pushed each other as they walked into the room. When they stepped into the room, their hearts couldn't help but tremble. The sound of footsteps became even clearer. The two of them looked at each other and seemed to have made up their minds. They stepped forward and their eyes fell on the empty bed. Where was she? The 9th Imperial Concubine's corpse that was lying on the bed had disappeared. Both of their minds went blank. They turned their heads in a daze and involuntarily looked to their right. The figure standing in front of the bronze mirror was dressed in white. He stood in front of the bronze mirror and slowly turned his head as if he felt their gazes. The pair of golden-green eyes looked so strange under the candlelight. His small face was so pale that it was frightening. "Ah, ghost!" An earth-shattering cry sounded. In the middle of the night, it completely alarmed the entire residence. Jingyu was originally a little confused by her own eyes. She didn't expect to see the 2 guards when she turned her head. Just as she was about to ask where everyone had gone, she didn't expect to hear the earth-shattering roars of the 2 guards before she could say a word. Jingyu was stunned. "Damn it, do I look that scary?" Jingyu's face turned completely black. She frowned and walked out of the room. "Help! The corpse has come to life. There's a ghost." Ah! Chapter 1166. The 2 people's howls resounded throughout the entire residence. Xiao Chun and Shengwan Linglan, who were in the neighboring house, heard them clearly. Xiao Chun was still holding the piece of paper in his hand and was deep in thought when he suddenly heard the howls. He immediately frowned. "What's going on?" Xiao Chun stood up and walked towards the door. "What kind of ghost is this?" Shengwan Linglan was also displeased. He thought that these guards needed to be properly disciplined. Xiao Chun and Shengwan Linglan walked out of the house and walked straight over. When the 2 guards saw Xiao Chun and Shengwan Linglan, they immediately rushed over. Yes. Probably because they were too frightened. They didn't say anything for a long time and just stood there trembling. "What's there?" Shangguan Linglan looked at the two guards who couldn't speak clearly and pushed them away in annoyance. Just as he and Xiao Chun were about to enter Jing Yu's house, the door slowly opened. A figure slowly stood at the door, barefooted and wearing white clothes. A pair of golden-green eyes blinked as they looked at Xiao Chun and Shangguan Linglan. That pale little face was so familiar. Hiss! Shangguan Linglan suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. There's a ghost! The guard finally calmed down and silently spat out these two words. Who are you calling a ghost? You're the ghost. Your whole family is made up of ghosts. Jingyu was very angry with this guard. Now that she heard him say that she was a ghost, her face instantly filled with anger, and she angrily scolded him. Ah! When the guard heard Jingyu's scolding, he was instantly dumbfounded. He stood there blankly with a blank expression. This ghost knows how to scold people? Jingyu! When Shangguan Linglan heard Jingyu's familiar voice, his eyes flashed with surprise. He blinked and looked at Jingyu and called out in confusion. Jingyu then turned her gaze to Shangguan Linglan and Xiao Chun. What's wrong? Jingyu blinked and looked at Shangguan Linglan and Xiao Chun and asked in confusion. Shangguan Linglan, Xiao Chun, and Xiao Chun, as well as Xing Er, who was beside Xiao Chun, all fell into a momentary silence. Why aren't you talking? Jingyu's eyes fell on Xiao Chun's face. She smiled faintly and said, Xiao Chun, look at my eyes. I can see now. I can see you. Ha! Before Jingyu could finish her sentence, she saw Xiao Chun striding towards her with a gloomy face. Jingyu was stunned by the ferocious light in his eyes. She was about to ask when Xiao Chun suddenly pulled her into his embrace. Jingyu's question also turned into a doubtful tone. She didn't understand what was going on at all. She had just taken a nap. Why did she feel that these people were behaving strangely? Xiao Chun, what's wrong with you? Jingyu felt Xiao Chun's arms tighten around her. She lifted her arms and wrapped them around Xiao Chun's waist as she asked worriedly. Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er sighed deeply when they saw this scene. Jingyu, you're still alive, Xiao Chun said with all his might. Jingyu was completely confused. What are you talking about? Of course I'm still alive. Jingyu moved her body in Xiao Chun's embrace and looked up at Xiao Chun. She looked at Xiao Chun's surprised expression and his tired face. Her heart ached for him. Chapter 1167. Yes, she's alive. Xiao Chun held Jingyu's cheeks tenderly, feeling the warmth from Jingyu's body. He listened to Jingyu's breathing and heartbeat. At this moment, he suddenly felt that there was no music as beautiful as her heartbeat. Jingyu, do you know you scare me to death? Shangguan Linglan finally confirmed that Jingyu was still alive. This wasn't an illusion. Jingyu turned her head to look at Shangguan Linglan. You really scared me to death. I thought you wouldn't talk to me anymore. Jingyu, thank goodness you're still alive. Shangguan Linglan stepped forward and hugged Jingyu tightly. His tone was filled with gratitude, and the meaning behind his words was very clear. Her eyes reddened slightly. Hugging Jingyu like this, she felt a little more at ease. Shangguan Linglan had never felt so devastated and heartbroken when he found out that Jingyu had died. Thank goodness it wasn't true. You brat, what kind of trick were you playing? Why did you jump into the pool of water? You even pretended to be dead to trick us. Shangguan Linglan finally remembered. He let go of Jingyu and glared at Jingyu unhappily. Jingyu's mind went blank for a moment. Then, as if she had thought of something, her eyes suddenly widened as she said, I remember now. Jingyu finally remembered everything that had happened. She was clearly in the Roman forest, but because her body was too hot, she jumped into the pool of water. Could it be? Do you know how scared I was when Chinggis said that you had drowned? Shangguan Linglan glared angrily at Jingyu and said, Hurry up and tell us the truth. What exactly happened? Holy shit, he really drowned. Jingyu's eyes widened. and her face was filled with confusion. She had lost consciousness after jumping into the pool of water, so she didn't know that she had been dead for so long. She hadn't fallen asleep? Jingyu sighed deeply and told them everything that had happened. Shangguan Linglan was stunned, and Xiao Chun frowned slightly. After Jingyu finished, she looked at their expressions and swore solemnly. I'm telling the truth. I really don't know what happened. Qingge and Yi Shui arrived. Everyone was confused after hearing Jingyu's words. Why did they feel like they were listening to a fairy tale? In the pugilistic world, there is indeed a type of person who is skilled in the turtle breathing technique. After Fang Ziqing heard everyone's narration, he looked at Jingyu with a curious gaze. He frowned and said, But what? Jingyu blinked and asked Fang Ziqing. But it doesn't make sense for this to happen to the 9th imperial concubine. Fang Ziqing rubbed his chin and said, The turtle breathing technique requires a strong inner strength and a technique that automatically seals the meridians. The 9th imperial concubine doesn't have any inner strength at all. Jingyu was stunned and looked down at herself. It seemed like she didn't have any inner strength. Then why did she fall into a state of suspended animation? Jingyu blinked and asked, How would I know? You were the one who faked your own death. Fang Ziqing's face darkened, and he glared at Jingyu. I don't know why you're talking so much nonsense. Jingyu glared at Fang Ziqing with her golden green eyes, her face full of disdain. Chapter 1168. Hey, you're the one who asked me. Fang Ziqing was completely resentful. He had asked him what was going on, and he had answered without thinking. Jingyu snorted coldly and turned her head away. Fang Ziqing was completely dumbfounded. It was indeed impossible to reason with women. Let's not talk about the fake death first. Let's talk about your eyes, 9th sister-in-law. Qingge wasn't very interested in Jingyu's fake death for the time being. However, he was completely confused when he saw Jingyu's golden green eyes. There are no signs of damage. Your eyes are perfectly fine. This was the conclusion that Qingge came to after he checked Jingyu's eyes before he arrived. Qingge was extremely conflicted. Did someone treat your eyes? How is that possible? Jingyu shook her head repeatedly. Who could treat Jingyu's eyes like Qingji's? If no one treated your eyes, how did your eyes suddenly recover? Qingge inched closer to Jingyu. Looking at Jingyu's golden green eyes, Qingge felt that Jingyu's eyes were even more different. This is really strange. Qingge stared at Jingyu's eyes and frowned. The traces of the medicine have completely healed. The medicine that I went through so much trouble to get from Miracle Medical Valley didn't even come in handy? Jingyu's body silently moved back a little. Qingge was really too close. Hey. 9th brother. Qingge wanted to continue studying Jingyu's eyes, but he was suddenly pulled up by the back of his collar. Qingji's face darkened. He turned to look at Xiao Chun, who was pulling him away with a gloomy face, and called out bitterly. I was just treating 9th sister-in-law. You crazy wife protector. Qingge glared angrily at Xiao Chun, his eyes full of anger. Jingyu isn't sick. Xiao Chun silently let go of his hand and turned to sit beside Jingyu. He turned to look at Jingyu's golden green eyes and said with a slight smile, Isn't this good? Everyone was speechless. By the way, Jingyu blinked and said very carefully, I seem to have been in this situation in the past. In this situation? What situation? Feigning death? Shangguan Linglan was slightly stunned. He turned to look at Jingyu. Can you not to say that? Feigning death. Jingyu's face darkened when she heard Shangguan Linglan's words. She said, That was clearly feigning death. What's the difference? Shangguan Linglan rolled his eyes nonchalantly. How is there no difference? Jingyu glared fiercely at Shangguan Linglan. She turned her head away unhappily and said, You won't understand a woman who only knows how to fight and kill. When Jingyu finished speaking, Shangguan Linglan instantly exploded. 9th sister-in-law, you just said that you were in this situation in the past? Qingge grasped the main point and looked at Jingyu suspiciously. Yes. Jingyu nodded and blinked. For the past 15 years, there would be a day after the 20th of January every year when the abnormal pupils would make me feel very uncomfortable. It would make the blood in my body feel like it was burning. Just like this time, in order to endure the burning sensation, I would jump into the water to make myself feel better. I don't remember what happened after that. I only know that when I woke up, it was like I was sleeping at the bottom of the water. But when I woke up, I didn't feel anything strange. Chapter 1169. When Jing Yu's words fell, everyone's eyes were filled with astonishment. They had never thought that it would turn out like this. Then why didn't you do this when you were with the 9 emperors for so many years? Qingge was also stunned. He guessed that this had something to do with the abnormal pupils. It's probably because of this pair of golden eyes. Jingyu blinked and said, 15 years ago, my eyes were emerald green. However, when I turned 15, my eyes became one gold and one green. After that, I was able to switch between these two colors at will. It was also because of these golden eyes that my body didn't have any abnormalities anymore. But now it's happening again. Jingyu raised her hand and touched the corners of her eyes as she said, furthermore, it seems like my eyes can't change anymore. Huh? When everyone heard Jingyu's words, they stared at Jingyu's golden green eyes. Only then did they realize that in the past, when Jingyu wasn't in a battle or needed to, her eyes would always be black. But now, Jingyu's eyes were always like this. I can't change color at will. Jingyu seemed to have read everyone's minds as she blinked and said, that's really strange. Qingji's face was full of confusion and confusion. He looked at Jingyu and said, regarding the Holy Family's abnormal pupils, our miracle physician Valley has always stayed out of it, so we don't know much about it. However, the abnormal pupils have always been the same color until death. Why did it change so much when it came to you? Originally, the dual-colored abnormal pupils were already shocking enough. I didn't expect your abnormal pupils to be able to change. Qingge looked at Jingyu with confusion in his eyes. He said hesitantly, Ninth sister-in-law, are you really a monster? Bang! Ah! Ouch! Ouch, ouch! As soon as Qingge finished speaking, Shengguan Linglan's hand hit Qingji's head without mercy. His face was dark as he said, who are you calling a monster? I'm talking about me. I'm talking about me. Qingge almost burst into tears. He looked at Shengguan Linglan's ferocious expression with fear. He swallowed and hid to the side. I've done a lot of research on the Holy Family and the poison sect, Fang Ziqing said slowly. Fang Ziqing slowly said, but what I can see is just the surface. Give me a little more time, and let me contact the Crown Princess. With the help of the royal family's library, I should be able to find a lot of things. Xiao Qin nodded slowly and said, the hidden clan has always disguised themselves as too mysterious, and we know nothing about the enemy. This situation is too disadvantageous for us. Know thyself and know thy enemy, and you'll never be defeated. Fang Ziqing lowered his head as a faint smile appeared on his lips. He said indifferently, just leave it to me. Thank you. Xiao Qin's eyes also showed a dim smile as he nodded slowly. So, this is the mystery behind why Jingyu jumped into the water of her own accord? Yi Shui's belated words made Jingyu rub her forehead speechlessly. Miss, isn't your reaction arc a little too slow? Jingyu had woken up safely. Although there were many unsolved mysteries, it was good that she was fine. The most joyous thing was that Jingyu's eyes had inexplicably healed. Her abnormal pupils had also recovered. However, Chapter 1170. Ah, why did I come here? In the Roman forest, Jingyu was carrying a few wild rabbits on her back. Her body was filled with a fishy smell, and the resentment on her face was so deep that it couldn't be any deeper. Shangguan Linglan yawned as he counted the arrows in his quiver. He said calmly, "You've been yelling the whole way. Can't you stop? You're too much of a bully." Jingyu lowered her head deeply and said, "Why can Xiao Chun and the others fight? But we have to fight for this nuisance of food. We have to give more food to the soldiers." Shangguan Linglan's eyes were filled with coldness as she looked at Jingyu and said, "If it wasn't for you, I would also be reduced to hunting wild animals." Jingyu looked at Shangguan Linglan's murderous eyes and said, "Isn't it good to bring you here to play? Really? What did you say?" Shangguan Linglan's murderous aura rose, causing Jingyu's body to tremble violently. She smiled as she leaned toward Shangguan Linglan and said, I say, you're especially beautiful today. Go to the side." Shangguan Linglan pushed Jingyu away rudely. Roar! A roar rang out, causing Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan to stop in their tracks. In the dense forest, a tiger with a colorful body jumped out, biting a dead rabbit in its mouth. "Ayaya, why did you get the rabbit covered in blood again? Didn't I tell you to be careful?" Jingyu walked up and took the rabbit from the tiger's mouth. She glared at the tiger and said, "Don't be so rude." After the tiger heard this, it let out a whimper, its heart filled with hidden bitterness. "Boss, I'm a tiger. I'm not human. If I don't kill the rabbit when I catch it, how can I bring it to you? Also, I have to hold it in. I can't swallow the rabbit. You don't know how hard it is for me to hold it in. Okay, go play by yourself." Jingyu patted the tiger's head and continued walking forward. The tiger seemed to have been pardoned and disappeared with a whoosh. "Brother, you're not a tiger. You're a leopard, right? You're quite fast." Speaking of which, Shangguan Linglan looked at this scene and said with a frown, "Why do I feel like your beast taming skills are getting better and better?" "Is that so?" Jingyu's lips curled up slightly, but she didn't say much. After walking for a while, there would be some ferocious beasts delivering their prey to their door. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were simply wandering around the forest to play. In just a morning's work, they were already full of prey. How boring! Jingyu was resting on a rock. She was picking her teeth with a piece of wood. She had just finished a good meal, so of course she needed to rest. Sigh. Shangguan Linglan was lying next to Jingyu and said bitterly, "It's all Feng Zicheng's fault. He said that we can't reveal it yet. It's killing me." Jingyu nodded in agreement. She frowned and said, "I don't know what that sly old fox Feng Zicheng is planning, but it's a good thing that we can't reveal the fact that my pupils have recovered." Chapter 1171. Jingyu slowly sat up as she spoke. Her golden-green eyes narrowed as she stared at the sunlight shining through the leaves. She spoke coldly. "If I could use this other pupil to catch the Holy Family and the poison sect off guard, that would be great." Shangguan Linglan stretched lazily as he spoke. "Just thinking about that scene makes me excited. It's just..." Jingyu looked up at the sky and sighed. "These days have been too hard to bear." Jingyu's voice echoed through the forest, startling a flock of birds. Shangguan Linglan turned to Jingyu and said, "Jingyu, didn't you grow up in the Roman forest? What fun places are there in this forest?" Fun places? Jingyu tilted her head slightly at Shangguan Linglan's words. She blinked a few times before her eyes lit up as if she had thought of something. "Got it." Shangguan Linglan immediately jumped up and looked at Jingyu with great interest. "Where?" "Waterfall Forest. There's a hot spring." Jingyu jumped up excitedly and hurriedly stood up. "Now's the best time to soak in the hot spring. Let's go." Shangguan Linglan's eyes lit up when he heard Jingyu's words. He followed Jingyu into the depths of the forest. Shangguan Linglan couldn't help but admire Jingyu immensely for being able to remember the way. They'd been walking for a long time, but they still hadn't heard the sound of running water. Shengwan Linglan had lost count of the number of times he'd asked this question. How much longer until we get there? Shengwan Linglan leaned against a tree trunk and took a sip from his water pouch as he asked. Soon, soon, Jingyu replied awkwardly. She turned around to look at the path and muttered, I remember it's nearby. Why is the entrance gone? Jingyu! Shengwan Linglan suddenly appeared behind Jingyu. We're here! Jingyu's entire body trembled as she abruptly straightened her body. You couldn't have remembered the way wrong, right? Shengwan Linglan went completely crazy. He actually believed Jingyu. I swear to the heavens, I definitely didn't. Jingyu swallowed and said, I just forgot where the entrance is, I. Shengwan Linglan was speechless as she looked at the sky. She silently walked to the side of a tree and sat down. She deeply sighed. Just as she was about to rest, she suddenly saw a mountain rat quickly scurrying into the rocky forest. How did you get in? Shengwan Linglan curiously went forward and pushed. He thought it was a stone wall, but it turned out to be a cave filled with vines. I found it. Jingyu saw Shengwan Linglan's actions and ran overexcitedly. She pushed aside the thick vines and said helplessly, I haven't been here for so many years, and the entrance has been blocked by the vines. Linglan, come quickly. Jingyu crawled in using both her hands and feet. People couldn't walk in this cave and could only crawl in while kneeling. Jingyu was in front, and Shengwan Linglan was behind her. After crawling in for a while, they stood up and could hear the sound of water clearly. We're here? Jingyu's voice rang in Shengwan Linglan's ears. However, Shengwan Linglan couldn't hear her clearly. In front of Shengwan Linglan and Jingyu was a large waterfall. They could hear the roar of the waterfall crashing down. There were countless waterfalls of various sizes, and it really lived up to its name of Waterfall Forest. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.